Okay. And we are.
Oh, we're going.
Here we go. Love and Thunder podcast number dozo.
Welcome to the Love and Thunder Cop podcast. I'm your host, Dave Lipson.
And I'm Camille, Leblanc-bazinet.
And we got a great little casty cast for you. We're going to get into some nutrition for fat loss. We're going to talk about testosterone and testosterone therapies, both natural and exogenous. And we're going to have some fun little story time talking about our baby girl Zoe turning 2. Take those ingredients, put them in a pot, stir it around, cook it for 30 minutes, and that's what this podcast is.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking fat loss, dirty diaper, and testosterone.
Who doesn't want to know about that?
Why not? Taboo.
Starting on the fat loss stuff, this is something that you and I have a lot of experience in, personally and professionally, having gone through multiple types of serious body fat cuts, getting ready for things like bodybuilding shows, and
coming back from pregnancy,
and doing that with at this point thousands of our athletes in some of our shred or fat loss challenges. So I run the 30-day shred challenge, which is a very immersive, all-in, what can you do in 30 days in terms of changing your physique. You run another challenge. What's the name of your challenge?
Well, we change it every month.
That's all right.
Because
That's
we
so
just
Cammy.
like to stay. Yeah, that is very
fresh.
me. I like to keep it fresh and fun.
But is it a month-long challenge? Is it a
multiple
months?
30 days.
Okay.
And then I normally give them like 1 or 2 weeks off in between. And then I'll give them maintenance prescription during the in-between. Because I don't want to just do like a non-stop of the fat loss. Like I really believe in cycling, like those fat loss.
So you're saying like periods of time where like you're really pushing, and then periods of time where maybe you're maintaining
or reversing. Because I always want to. The goal is to keep bringing the metabolism back up, right?
Yeah.
And then be able to keep the body composition where it is,
and
feed them more and more.
The body needs time to adjust and maybe hold on to a new set point. Get used to it. You create homeostasis where it's regular. We have athletes that'll do the month-long challenge and they'll repeat it we put a maximum on it. So 3 months max, which I think for most people is a good
3
period
months
of time
is enough,
to really see what you're capable of. At that point, they might go to like maintenance or reverse diet and just kind of try to hold it before they start pushing again. But one of the things that we do, a little different than most people, is like a lot of these fat loss challenges might just be like, oh, it's just a nutrition challenge or it's just some training. But I kind of view it as like, taking every possible variable that we can control to stack the deck, so to speak, in the favor of the client. So it's really hard for them to fail. So it's not just training, it's not just nutrition.
Yeah, I feel like most program out there, it's either like just the training and just nutrition, where people just try to put the athlete in a calorie deficit. And I think what we both have noticed with doing that is that that's kind of giving the clients only 1 hour into their day, and then letting them like go on their own and like find a way to mess it up in the other 23 hours.
That's right. You trained hard for an hour, you did something good, now you got 23 other hours to mess it up or fuck it up, so to speak.
So we try to just really build like program that is like, on my side, like also involve a lot of mindset, a lot of like timing through the day. So we're really bringing like a lot more precision and a lot more like targeted adaptation involving hormonal response. So it's not just like, here's the food, kind of do what you want with it through the day, but we're really trying to just give you like everything you need to be super successful.
Yeah, and you're right. It totally boils down to that schedule is your framework to lean on, because every action you take in the day is done on purpose with purpose. If you give someone an inch, they're going to take a mile.
Yes.
They're going to save all their carbs for the end of the day, and it's just going to kind of, in some ways, defeat the purpose. And we want more than anything to have our athletes be successful, because regardless of what we think, results are king. You can't argue with results. And so to see a before and after picture that is so compelling that people are doing a double take after 30 days and going, what the hell, did you do? we don't need to try to argue about why our methods are more or less effective.
Yeah.
It's undeniable.
Yes.
So let's get into a little bit about like what that looks like on the nutrition side of things. And one of the big things that's happening now is like athletes are inundated, and people in general, with so much information about nutrition.
So
and fat
much
loss.
information.
And I think what we try to do is really boil it down to real basic foundations that you need to have before you even start worrying about any of the other shit. You gotta have this stuff dialed in to start losing body fat. And the first thing we talk about is a caloric deficit. I don't think that's a word people are unfamiliar with, but let's talk a little bit about what that actually means.
Yeah, so a caloric deficit is just, for example, you have like a X amount of fuel that comes in your body through the day, and then depending on how active you are, you're gonna like exert like that energy out. So
you have your basal metabolic rate. Like that's how much, you know, how many calories your body is using to sustain its current mass.
Yes.
Not even with the additional activity, just like hanging out, sitting down, doing your regular thing. When you add the activity in there, there's additional energy requirements.
Yes.
And when you start consuming less food than your body needs to sustain its current mass,
your body wants to adapt to go catch up that amount of food.
And for a lot of people, I think like they make mistakes either being too aggressive with that deficit or not aggressive enough.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about the ways that we maybe assign a baseline for people based on their age and their gender and their activity level, and some ways that we essentially give our best guess as to where someone might start for a caloric deficit.
Yes. So I know that this is what we do with our athletes, and for me and you, I think we like created something like 12 different starting point depending on like age. Am I going too vague right now?
No.
Okay. Depending on age, gender, percentage of body fat, and activity level.
Yep.
That's kind of where what we do is that we look at our athlete. Okay, for example, you are a woman, 40 years old, about 20% body fat, and then no abs, and you train like 3 times a week. And then what we'll do is that we'll take your current weight, like minus 20 pound-ish, or look at your lean body mass and give you X amount of calorie per pound of lean body mass.
When I think about this, I like to start
I feel like I went way too in depth.
But when I think about this, I like to start with like the best case scenario athlete and move down from there. So when I think about someone...
Okay, let's give them, for people at home, like, let's go super general.
Yeah,
yes.
But let's say we have a male, right? Men they're going to be better at fat loss because they're hormones. We have a male. They're under 40 years old.
Yes.
They have 10% body fat or less, and they're active. That's our best case scenario. To get that athlete to start them in a caloric deficit, the magic number for me is 12.
Yeah.
12 calories per pound of body weight per day. You know, so when we have a 200-pound athlete, they're going to start at 2,400 calories per day to start to get into a deficit. Now, the thing is, like, you can have people with identical biometrics that may respond completely differently.
Yeah.
So there's always that X factor, but that's a pretty good guess. Now, from there, we can look at body fat and say, okay, what if you're over 10%? Well, that's where, instead of changing the multiplier number of 12... No,
because we like the 12.
Yeah.
Just bring your weight down, like more towards your
It allows us to work
mass.
in like finer increments as opposed to going to a 13 multiplier. So, you know, we might say something like, okay, let's take 10 pounds off that body weight and then multiply it by 12. If they're over 40, we usually do the same thing, even if they are 10% or less. If they're a female, we usually start them at minus 10 to minus 20 off their body weight. And as their body fat gets higher, we subtract more and more weight off of their body weight.
So as a resume for people at home, like, we overall like to start people at a 12 calorie per lean body mass, per pound of lean body mass. So if you want to start somewhere, that's a great place to start. And now, looking if this works or not, just look at how your weight changed this week.
Yeah, I mean,
so
that's
through the
thing.
week, if you are in a calorie deficit, you should be losing weight.
And that's the problem with a lot of like nutrition calculators or a lot of fat loss programs, is they give you one prescription to start with, But the truth is that initial baseline prescription, what we often term as our A days, because we have A, B, C, even D days we'll get to, is it's just a litmus test to see how you're going to react.
Yes.
If you reacted well, and what we kind of determine as well is, losing maybe 1 to 3 pounds per week, that's a good, safe, healthy rate of weight loss where you're not going to be eating away at too much muscle, but you're not going to be going so slow that nothing really changes.
Yes.
Then we can incrementally start to make that deficit a little harder and harder. But if you lose no weight, we obviously need to be more aggressive.
Yes.
If you lose too much, we got to maybe pull it back or add in a refeed.
Yes.
And that's just calories. Now, with regard to macronutrients, there's also more of a formula we generally lean on for most people, which is looking at the ratios of protein, carbs, and fat, or what percentage of those macronutrients are coming from your total daily calories.
Yes.
So generally, we start athletes at about 40% protein, 30% carbs, and 30% fat. Let's talk a little bit about why we would even do that. Like, what's the purpose of maybe restricting carbs a little bit or bumping protein up?
Yeah, I think especially the way that we time the food through the day, what we like to do with our athlete is really try to keep the carbs around the training. So we can really target an anabolic response through the body. Anabolic is where your body wants to get that stuff in your cell.
Or at the very least, maintain your muscle mass, because when you're training hard, lifting weights hard, you're breaking down muscle. And if you are so depleted with muscle glycogen, you don't have the available storage for fuel, then it's going to actually start eating away at muscle. So it makes a lot of sense to place the majority of your calories, and especially your carbohydrates, which provides the fuel for your muscles to do high intensity contractions, like when you're weightlifting, around that training window.
Yes.
Okay, cool. And
exactly what I was saying.
And then just from a little bit of
we want to, so because with our athletes, we're looking at weight loss and we want to keep the muscle on. So the goal is to kind of put those carbs and the chunk of our food around that training window and try to stay more in a fasted space around the rest of the day. So not as much food for the rest of the day, but we got great energy to train and enough food to sustain our daily activity.
And Camille and I both do this differently. I prefer for my athletes to do a little bit of an intermittent fast where they cut their eating off at about 8 p.m. and they don't start eating their first big meal until at least 12 or 1 the next day. During the morning, they do things like fasted cardio, but they're not really having carbs and they're not really having lots of calories, because we want to increase their insulin sensitivity.
Yep.
Insulin being the storage hormone. So if we're very sensitive to insulin in the body, we're not going to be constantly secreting as much to clear blood sugar out of the bloodstream. It's a great way to kind of reboot people's metabolic process and get them in that mode of pulling fat for energy, especially during fasted cardio. And that's why the carbohydrates are generally a little bit more restricted. Now, some people need to be
more restricted when you compare it to
just a balanced diet. Even.
Yeah, other prescription out there, because a lot of people do our things and they think it's a lot compared to what
when
they
you compare
did.
it to the way most people that are maybe not as versed in nutrition are eating, it's actually way more restricted because they're so high in carbs, so low in protein, and so high in fat.
It's just different.
It is, and everyone responds differently depending on their entry point. Like some people, we actually need to pull the carbs down to almost nothing to really reboot them and get things working. Some people have great carbohydrate tolerance and they can have more and still see good fat loss and muscle maintenance. So there is wiggle room in there, but in
that
general,
is something talking about more precise about people. That's something that we see in our athletes a little further down. So we always want to start with kind of that baseline that works for most of the time, which is that 12 calorie per lean body mass and that ratio of 40-30-30. And once you've gone through this for 1 or 2 weeks, assess how your body is changing, and then you can start to make some adaptation.
And you can't just keep taking more and more calories away. That's the thing. It's if they're not responding to the restriction, at a certain point, this 250-pound person is eating 2,000 calories. They should be losing weight.
Yes.
Maybe the answer isn't less food. Sometimes the answer is more food, but maybe a little bit more carbohydrate restriction.
Yes.
And we see this all the time with people who maybe stay in this fat loss phase for too long, is they burn the calories down so low that they can actually grind their metabolism to a halt. So that's why the rate of loss is really important to focus on. And that's the big difference is we do weekly check-ins with people where we can see what their weight has changed, how they're feeling. That's a really important indicator as to how their body is responding, how compliant they were with the diet. If it's unachievable, it doesn't make sense to do.
If they don't do it, it doesn't work.
Yep.
So got to find something that they can do it.
And I think also for athletes, having that accountability of knowing they got to take their shirt off and take a photo and check back in with their coach and a group full of people who are doing the same thing. I think that allows them, like, just like, kind of when we do CrossFit, it's group suffering.
Yes.
Like, I'm okay to do it because everyone else is doing it.
Yes.
And, the more contact we can have with the athletes, the better. Otherwise, when things get silent, you often lose people. Let's move on.
Yes, to
testosterone. Yeah. And I think people ought to conflate testosterone to be like just like a guy's kind of thing. But the truth is testosterone is important for men and for women. It's a very important sex hormone, and it's very important for from a performance standpoint for lean muscle mass, for fat loss, for mental acuity and drive. Obviously,
performance too,
in the bedroom as well.
Yep.
So people who deal with things like erectile dysfunction, lethargia, and it naturally declines as you get older. When, for men after the age of 26 testosterone starts to decline. And for a lot of people, they tend to just kind of be a little bit fatalistic and say like, oh, I guess I'm getting older. Or especially for men, I've seen a lot of people just suffering in silence and being like, oh, I don't want to talk about it. Maybe I'm embarrassed about it, that kind of stuff.
I think that most people at home are just, and I mean, that used to be me too before I now know more about more people, but I think people at home just see like this person like juiced out of their mind, and they think those are the only people that do it. And if they do any of it, they'll look like that. Where the truth is really not that at all. The truth is like to try to use this to like optimize your health and give you just the best way to live right now, because that's the goal. Unless you are competing in something or like you don't need it.
It's
like,
funny.
I feel like
the
goal should be just live your best life.
Most men that I know, that you and I both know, who are over the age of 40, like the vast majority of them are on like a testosterone replacement therapy. That's because we're friends with a lot of fit people and they really care about the idea of thrive, not just survive.
Yeah.
But
why don't you take us through your journey through this?
Well, you've been there with me hand
I know,
in hand.
that's why I'm saying that. So, because like for you, like we've seen you change through the years, me and you, and it was kind of this thing of like, my God, what's going on? And like, what's going on with Dave? And I know for me, you started to be super lethargic. That was the first thing. I was like, you didn't have that like fire and drive like you
there was
used
a number
to.
of things there was a number of things that happened. This goes back to like, I guess I was in my early, almost mid-30s, and the first thing that happened was I got sick. I went to like South America and picked up this like stomach bug that made me sick for months, and then after that weird things started happening to my body. Like my muscle mass started to decrease. I started becoming kind of a lot softer. I didn't have any motivation to do anything. I started experiencing some erectile dysfunction. I'm okay to say that. It's important for guys to know it's okay to say that and to address it. And in general, like I felt like something is off, something is wrong. And, I didn't really say anything for a long time until I had to. I had to be like, hey, I got to figure this out. I went to the doctor. Sure enough, the testosterone level was at 250, which is very low. The total testosterone on a range, and this is from everyone from like 18-year-old boys to 7-year-old men, is generally going to be on a normal scale of 300 to maybe 1,000. 300 being an older man and 1,000 being like an 18-year-old.
So
kid.
If someone goes to their doctor, that's what they would want.
Yeah, they want to see the free and the total, right? But the total is a really good indicator as to how much testosterone you're producing. The free is kind of telling you how much you're actually getting of that.
Yeah.
Okay. So like, obviously it's low. A lot of guys test low. They can test low for a number of reasons. Usually things like training volume, sleep and recovery, stress, diet, that can really contribute to it. So that was the first place I started. It was like, hey, let me try to take my stress down. Let me try to sleep better. Let me try to eat better. Make sure I'm not just constantly in a catabolic state. And marginal improvement, right? Maybe from 250 to 300, not great. Then we went to a doctor, and this is like the natural path.
Like natural doctor, where we try to Gosh, I remember like you would get like those bags.
Oh, just
bags
thousands of dollars,
Every day
in
it was
supplements.
Thousands
And
of, oh
it was great.
gosh.
I mean, we did all kinds of blood work and they looked at everything and it was good. But like the
And it
actual
was almost
treatment
like,
of it, I felt like was just like they were just sucking money out of us.
which
Like
I think they were.
We spent almost $50,000, you and I, on just like supplements to try to make ourselves better. And then after like a full year of doing that and seeing that it really hadn't gone up that much, that's when I was like, all right, I'm done with this. Like, just give me the stuff. Okay?
Yeah, I remember that.
And it was scary. Like, you and I were actually pretty scared. We're like,
I know.
what does this mean? Is this
It was so funny how much like, well, I think it's because I was a professional athlete and I was like, we can't do this.
Yep,
like
exactly.
you can't touch this. It's the devil. Like, you know.
So let's go over all the things we were
so,
worried about. Cheating. Oh, are you trying to cheat as a performance enhancing drug? I never competed in CrossFit again. That was never.
Yeah,
how is it going to reflect on
Camille?
Oh, well,
if
Dave is doing this, then he must be giving it to her. That's absolutely ridiculous because we have moral fiber. Like, we believe in honesty.
Yes.
The other thing was like fertility. Like, oh my God, are we going to be able to have babies?
Mm-hmm.
You know, being on it forever. Like, am I going to have to stay on this for the rest of my life? Which the truth is, my biggest fear was like, you know, what if I have to go off of it? Well, if I had to go off of it, it would land me right where I was anyways.
Yeah.
So I was already living my greatest fear.
Yeah.
And then what people might think or say about it, because they tend to just be very, you know, it has like a stigma, just like marijuana. It has
it was
a stigma.
like all of it was fear that like had nothing to do with your health. It was like fear of everyone else.
Or medical complications. Like, am I going to have a heart attack?
Well, so
am I going to lose my hair?
Yeah.
Am I going to be covered in acne? By the way, none of that happened.
No.
Right? You know, with good medical doctors, and I started working with, at first, the Bolger Longevity Institute, now with Live Health, and with the same doctor at Live Health, where it's every 3 months monitoring.
I mean, there's a big difference between trying to self-prescribe with, you know, Joe Schmo at the 24-hour fitness or Globo Gym that was like, yo, I'll make this in my basement, and being like strongly followed by doctors, because they are
and getting the pharmaceuticals from good legitimate pharmacies, not people like mixing it in their basement where you can end up with things like heavy metals or arsenic, or you know, you don't know what you're injecting.
And doctors
in your body.
are so scared to hurt anyone that they start like very, very
It's the Hippocratic Oath. The first rule is do no harm, right? And so, like, we started with a very conservative dose of a little testosterone. It was like 100 milligrams of testosterone cypionate, which is generally the compound, you know, it's a slow metabolizing testosterone that makes your levels steady. But we started with a conservative dose, and it was great. And I kind of landed at like, I think now, like, my baseline for the past couple of years has been around 200 milligrams of cypionate, which puts my total testosterone right at the upper end of normal. So it puts it right around 800 to 1,000. Now, the effects, I mean, like, I'm really happy that I did it. I was first off like
higher performance everywhere.
Everyone's
happy.
Everyone's happy. Better performance in the bedroom. Really, like as soon as I got on it, I was like motivated. That's when I wrote my first book.
Yep.
Where I was just all of a sudden like I was driven to do
it
stuff.
Was that for me, like your wife, the biggest thing I've seen, like from you, like just having normal hormones. You're just a lot more fun, a lot more drive, which I think for us is so important because we push each other always to be better. So I know we feed off each other, we feed off each other's energy. And when one of us is like kind of blob, like we can feel it.
It feels like
I went from having a little bit more of a blob. Like I felt like I had to push you to do things. And
I didn't want to be out of bed. I didn't want to go to the gym.
Yeah, and it was hard because I felt like
always tired, constantly tired.
And you used to work on the weekend back then. So through the week we would be together, and I would be just like full-time studying in chemical engineering, like working for the CrossFit game, and you would be like in bed.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, no,
It
like
feels
this is
like,
not going to
and
work.
for you guys out there, maybe you can relate to this. It just feels like having your dick in the dirt. Like it just.
Like
I remember.
literally.
I remember at one point we were at a party with our friends, and they were like getting in the pool, and everyone was taking their shirt off, and I was like ashamed to take my shirt off, not because I didn't look good, but I'd slipped so far from what I was that I was just like, I just don't even want to do it, and I never want to feel that way again.
I feel like how you feel dictates so much of your action,
confidence and your energy, and what you're putting out there.
Because you still look great, but because you didn't feel good, it was just like.
I am a more generous person. Like it's got a lot of benefits.
Yes.
But I think people sometimes wonder like what kind of effects it's going to have physically. Honestly, from where I am now to where I was, I've made enormous gains mentally, physically, emotionally. But like just looking at my physique changed, but really, really slowly. Like every year it was a little more.
When did you start it?
Well, we started doing this in like 2016, 17 was the first time I started taking a little bit, and then 16. Getting smarter.
So
that's been
like
now
6 years.
Yeah, 6 years, and people have seen like my physique change going from a 200
But you also
pound,
completely changed the way you train because you got back surgery, which we'll talk about in another episode.
And we'll just to give you metrics here, like I went from a 200 pound, kind of a little bit softer than I am now for sure, like probably 15% body fat, to someone who's like 250 and under 10% body fat. But that didn't happen overnight, and it doesn't just happen with testosterone, because there's a zillion people on testosterone that don't look anything like me.
Right? Yeah, you can't just. I know. We see some of our friend and people we know that they take it. They come to us and they're like, "Hey, I started testosterone," but then they don't do anything that is in line with health.
Yep.
And we're like, why?
Yeah.
Like it's like you have to do everything right, and then if you need it, like if things don't go the right way, then like okay, like maybe talk to your doctor about it. But if you're not sleeping well, you're constantly drinking, you're not eating well, and you don't train, there's so many other things to do first.
It's one small piece of a larger important piece that is really part of 3 pillars. So internal chemistry, like for men, testosterone is an important part. So is thyroid. So is just your general blood markers and internal health. And then you need to have your nutrition dialed in, and that pushing you in the right direction. And you need to have your training dialed in. And all those 3 things move in confluence. You can continue to make slow and steady progress, which is what I did. But you can't just like take testosterone and then fuck off.
Wish it forward.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. And because there are things to keep an eye on, your red blood cells, potential stress you could be putting on your body, we limit anything that can contribute to that. So for instance, we don't drink. I won't drink because I want to make sure I'm always keeping my blood pressure good, and that's always something I'm a little concerned with. So no alcohol has no place. My liver enzyme levels or kidney function, like I'm not going to touch alcohol because I don't want to piss those things off. We're trying to be able to think of it more holistically than just one hormone. Okay, so let's move on. We got 3 minutes. We're going to close out with some fun stories. Our daughter Zoe turned 2. Oh my gosh.
I love her so much.
Every morning I
cry
wake up
all the time.
I'm so excited to wake up every morning to see her face when she runs into my room and she goes, "Daddy!" Every
time I pick her up in her crib in the morning, she starts to laugh and she goes, "Yay!"
And from where she came, for those of you guys who are listening, Zoe was born early. It was super traumatic for everyone. We spent 3 months in the hospital. A lot of that time worried for her life, watching alarms go off, wondering if we were going to be able to resuscitate her multiple times a day. And then from there, we got her out, and she went from this baby that was born at 2 pounds now to like this little 30-pound monster full of energy.
She's amazing.
And she is just like the joy of our life. And seeing her thrive to me is like the most rewarding thing. I get really I get really like that when I think about where she started and where she's at now.
I think that the fact that it was so hard when she started, it really gave us I don't know how to say it. It made us realize how much of a miracle and a gift she is. And I remember when she was born, for me, because we didn't know how long we were going to have her, I just promised myself to give her everything I could for the time I had with her. And I just remember every day she was still there with us at the hospital. it was kind of a gift, and I feel like it never stops. So for me, like every day she's a little gift. I want to spend as much time with her as we can.
We filled an entire room up. We probably blew up like 100 balloons.
We spent the whole night
she likes
blowing
balloons. And then, you know, we took her to daddy-daughter dance class, and then the gymnastics, and she had a water day at school, and she had her cake. We bought her a bubble machine, and she had a great day. And just like hearing her laugh and her joy for life is the greatest gift. So for those of you guys out there who may have been, you know, dealing with stuff with your kids, maybe they were born premature or a health issue, we understand how hard and scary that can be, staring down the barrel of a gun. But we want to let you know, like, keep hope alive, because the kids are resilient, and, you know, as a parent, your job is to just support them and make their lives as joyful as you can for however long.
All right, this is episode 2. Follow us, subscribe, and ask us questions in the comment. Bye.